Welcome, everyone, to the fifth Platform and Treasury Council recurring meeting. Today's agenda covers several important items, including updates on Telcoin network development and a variety of proposals at various stages of development. As a reminder, these recurring meetings serve several critical functions to our governance. They provide transparency to our community, create structure for our forum and discussing proposals, enable proposal authors to present ideas to the council and to the community for their review, allow the community to hear, see, discuss, debate, and refine these proposals so that they can get to a place where we have consensus, which is really core to our structure as really a unanimous consensus style of governance as close as feasible. They provide a medium for regular platform updates as we'll go through with the Telcoin network update today. They ensure consistent communication between council members, and they allow the community directly engage through Q&A with the councils to share their preferences, interests, ask questions, and ideally get to a place of mutual understanding and consensus across the board. As an intro, I also want to reiterate that the Platform and Treasury Councils represent our global governance layer for the Telcoin platform and TEL and its association. Together, these councils oversee platform-wide systems, association social policies, and manage the TEL Treasury. After Telcoin Network is live with 10 validators, its governance will shift over to the Platform and Treasury Council as well. And as council members, our key responsibilities include reviewing and voting on snapshot proposals, which I'm excited to announce that we have a proposal that is live on Snapshot and being voted on, which we'll discuss in a little bit. We're required to attend these council meetings to provide the community with regular updates, to monitor the platform systems, and enforce rules under our jurisdiction at the operational level, so the day-to-day rules that we prescribe and that are under our domain. In the last meeting, we discussed Telcoin network development progress with both protocol and bridging updates, exchange listings progress and strategy, which we've been really working hard at over, really Squirtel and Leo, and kicked off by Coops. Each council meet, we've made some progress. Really excited to hear about that. We got to meet Make It, who is our market maker across exchanges as well. They introduced themselves, and if you want to hear more from them so that you can, as a member of the association, gauge them as a provider as well as understand what they do, then I would highly recommend going back to the last council meet, which is always on YouTube the next day. And we finalized a proposal for providing council member email addresses, among a few other things. And so now we have the Telcoin network update, which I will hand over to Grant and Co. to provide some insight into network development, progress, and what we should expect in the coming weeks, months, and where we are today.
Thanks, Parker. Telcoin made steady progress through the holidays. We're conducting extensive testing on the state sync solution and working through 2 edge cases to kind of just refine that, lock that in place. We're also about halfway through completing the replacement for the consensus network layer with LIP P2P. So the core protocol team also spent time this week kind of finalizing a roadmap for releasing Telcoin Network's alpha mainnet. Timelines are notoriously difficult to predict in software development, but we made our estimates based on the best of our ability. So we're targeting a code freeze on May 5th, 2025, so auditors can begin auditing code that same week. I realize that's very different from my original and optimistic target of October I shared back in August, but I'm going to take a minute just to address that. So I really just failed to take into consideration the fact that I had been developing the protocol completely by myself. Steve had just joined the team, and Marcus was pretty soon after. And they did their job, and they came in and they identified a lot of areas in the protocol and the code that could be improved, and that really just ultimately made the network a much better and secure product, but also, exposed a lot of areas that we needed to spend time and fixing. So, but with that, we're doing our best to listen to the feedback. Everybody informed Telcoin Network project. Earlier today, I put to source Telcoin Network GitHub repositories where to visit our project being made and tracked and all the issues that are being addressed. It also allow other developers that are interested in the success of Telcoin Network to contribute directly to the code. So finally, because we've discussed open sourcing the project during previous meetings, I would like to ask the council's permission to possibly move this proposal to snapshot as with the plan to
Should we
release
do
it
an
on
I?
January 20th. Yeah, I mean,
Should we
all in
do a
favor?
little I here, or what is it? Yeah, I.
Aye.
Yeah,
Aye.
are there any opposed to
No,
move to a snapshot vote tomorrow?
sounds good.
Okay, great. Well, I guess that'll kind of bring us into the next topic here. We have our first TIP1, and that was actually initially brought to the forum by Crypto Stevo. Big shout out and thank you for him for his contribution, both a fellow community member and a TAN council member. Voting on that TIP commenced on January 6th, and the snapshot period will conclude on January 11th, depending on your time zone. But so if you can, and if you have not, please cast your vote on the Platform Council snapshot if you haven't already. Just checked it before the call about 30 minutes ago, and we currently have 6 out of the 8 in favor. But for TIPs, we still need 100% quorum for the TIP to pass. And that means that every Platform Council member has to cast a vote. There is a yes, there is a no, and there is an abstain option. So if you are conflicted for whatever reason, you do not have to vote yes, but you do have to vote in order for this to pass. So please reach out to us. We have today's Thursday, so yeah, Friday and Saturday, pretty much to the end of the working day is Central Time in the States. About I believe it's like 3:59 p.m. On Saturday. So after that, yeah. So please reach out if you have any issues or questions. But and I'll follow up. We'll make sure to follow up if you have not gotten a chance to vote yet, just to make sure we're good. But just to remind everybody, after that vote passes, the proposal is going to be submitted to the Compliance Council, and they will have 72 hours to veto TIP1 with a 3/4 vote. And if the Compliance Council fails to veto the proposal, then it will be affirmed and implemented and documented, and we'll start doing that on Monday, January the 13th. So, great. I guess as far as TIPs and Telcoin Network, is there any questions or concerns? I would mind asking any of our audience members too, if you want to raise your hand. I'm happy to address specific questions.
Grant, could you just clarify some of the work you did? I didn't quite catch it. It was after you said about the testing over the Christmas period. There was a bit of technical jargon that you said.
Absolutely. So through the holidays, so State Sync is I guess a fancy way of saying we if a new node wants to join the network, it needs to have the entire history of the blockchain in order to participate in consensus. So what we're really trying to do is expand it so that new validators can join the network. Once that network, once we launch the network, other nodes are going to be joining, and they need a way to participate in consensus, and in order to participate in consensus, they have to have the entire blockchain downloaded. Now, that could be potentially problematic if, for instance, there's some a malicious party or bad data, and this can really delay things. And so the system needs to be trustless, it needs to be efficient, and it needs to support new nodes joining the network. So that's basically the concept of state sync, state just kind of being the databases. It's nice to be able to just go out and download something, but in a blockchain, that's not really safe because it requires trust. And so we have a system in place. Steve has been doing a great job, a lot of work in that area to really just provide new nodes to, in a trustless manner, request and download and verify all the data that they're receiving from the network and catch up to speed. So once they're caught up on speed, they can then become committee members and basically join the network as validators. That same process is also being designed so that anyone can run a node. They just, once they're caught up, they won't be able to vote for consensus. But they would be able to sync fully with the blockchain, catch every transaction, execute it, verify them for their own client, and basically track consensus and track the state of the network and submit transactions themselves without having to rely on any other node. So, and then the second point was about replacing consensus network layer. So on testnet and the current iteration, and the way that was fastest way for me to build testnet was through a particular library that as we get closer to production, one of the things that we're doing is through our security hardening process is evaluating not only our own code, but what's the code that we're relying on. If we're looking if we're just using a package that we've downloaded again from other open source communities that may not take security as seriously as we do, just from using that code in that library in that package, we're exposing ourselves to those vulnerabilities. And so one of the things that now that the protocol team is they've got their feet under them and we're all on the same page, everybody's caught up and really taking extreme ownership over the different sections of this protocol. That was a concern that was kind of discussed internally, and really that we all came agreement on that. We actually don't feel comfortable moving forward in a production environment with bridged Telcoin and with actual value on the chain using this particular library to send messages back and forth. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I don't necessarily want to disparage any other projects that may or may not be using this library, but from our own internal security audit, we don't feel comfortable moving forward with it. Instead, we feel much more comfortable with evaluating the other options on the networking layer, on sending messages back and forth between nodes. We've decided that libp2p, which is a very popular and well reviewed open source project, that would actually be a much better solution for us to take to production. And so that is the process that I've spent the past few weeks while Steve has been focused on state sync and implementing this new feature. I've gone back through and I've developed basically a new networking solution for how these nodes are going to be able to send secure messages back and forth. The additional benefit to libp2p that we're also excited about was that it does also support a gossip network. And this type of gossip network is used in other projects, for instance, like the Lighthouse, which is an Ethereum consensus project that is been well security audited, and they are using this type of gossip protocol for their own implementation. So I mean, projects like that we love to see because they have a much larger development team, a lot larger. They are a lot more battle tested, a lot more peer reviewed. So that sort of thing really gives us confidence in moving forward in that direction. The gossip network is also something that we weren't able to use in the previous library. And so that was like a missing feature, basically. So it's kind of, we could replace the network code, have more security, and have this missing feature that we need for state sync and supporting all other types of nodes, including bridging nodes, to bridge to transaction network. Or we would have to basically stick with a library that we weren't that confident in, and implement this gossip feature from scratch. And so that's really kind of the bullet that we chose to bite, and to tackle on some of that, a little bit of tech debt, but I think mostly we're gonna have a more secure network, and we also have this gossip network feature so that as validators are creating blocks in real time, it's a very efficient way to disseminate that information to all interested parties without having to go through and send individual messages to every single person who subscribed. Did that answer your question, Coops? Or
Yeah,
is there?
absolutely. You say you're 50% through roughly on replacing the consensus network layer.
Yes. I'm confident. Yes. So that's correct.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Grant, there are a couple of questions for you in the chat. The first one is from Will, which is what library doesn't pass muster? And I believe you said you prefer not to disclose the other projects, right?
Yes. I think it's so.
I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, and instead I can describe why I didn't why some of our concerns were that it was heavily based in macros, which is a Rust language specific tool that can basically build code for you during the compilation process. It makes it kind of a rinse and repeat. It can be very efficient if you know what the macro is doing, but after we spent time auditing this code and understanding the macro and what it was doing, not only were we unimpressed, or gosh, I don't want to, again, like, I'm not trying to hurt any feelings. It the code was not very efficient. It was also kind of a black box, and so as we get ready, like something that we're considering too is like, as we spend money, these security audits are not cheap, and they have finite timelines. And so if we're going to pass our code off, and we expect the security firm to honestly and accurately inspect our code, the last thing that we want them to do is have to get through and dig through some really confusing macro implementations that took our own protocol team, just like hours to just wrap our head around, just like some of the intricacies of like what is actually happening in this particular corner or not. Again, like the whole reason that we were kind of there is like, this is a lot of happened a long time before Stephen Marcus even got here. And so, one of the things that I had asked them to do, and that they've taken on by the horns, is like, to review the code, find areas of improvement, and make this a blockchain that we can take into production and be fully confident about, and that we're also confident that when we pay for a security audit, they're not opening up these macros and going, okay, yeah, I think that's great. Didn't find any vulnerabilities. Instead, we have clean code that's well documented, that has been peer reviewed by a lot more projects, that it's like a lot more eyes on this open source project. That the package we're using in particular is like relevant to really just one blockchain, and is written by just a very small group of people. And yeah, Will, I'd be happy to talk one-on-one with that. Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just to interject real quick, and you kind of hit it at the end there. We're moving from something that's tiny with a small community with a much smaller feature set to what is, I feel like, kind of becoming an industry standard for this sort of thing. So it's not that, the thing was bad, but, we're moving to something much better supported that's already been audited by other groups. It's already, it has a lot more features that, we're not going to be implementing, like Grant said, gossip ourselves and things like that. So just it's a win-win all around. Not that the other tech is bad or we're bagging on anybody.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Well said.
Yeah, no, I was just curious.
Wasn't
And then there's a few more questions for you, Grant, as we move through the call. The next one is, what are the remaining, from Why Not? He's asked, what are the remaining tasks required to complete before the beta mainnet launch, which I've seen that list. It's quite long, but it's like, very well set up in terms of, phases from my read.
yeah.
I think a high level would be good. And then maybe some
Be
insight
happy
into
to.
how you plan to share more info on that as things go on.
So, specifically to address why not, I did see your message in Telcoin Network earlier today. I've been getting, I've had a lot of stuff on my plate today, so I was planning to respond directly to this call. But since we're here and have a roadmap that we've sat down and spent some time just really kind of finalizing and identifying, is there anywhere on here that are nice to haves versus like absolutely must haves? And what we've come up with is a list of to dos that we are going to include as issues on GitHub, and tracking a project on GitHub with this open source repo. So for the future tracking, I highly recommend that you go. Please feel free to check out that forum post, and that'll be where they are. But to answer your question specifically, the remaining tasks for mainnet. For beta mainnet, one of the first things is going to be to release alpha mainnet, and the biggest difference between alpha mainnet and beta mainnet is one of the things that we're able to kind of streamline is the way that nodes are managed. And I don't want to really get too much into the weeds on this call, in the nuance between alpha and mainnet, but essentially just removing the prefixes and the nuance between alpha and beta. The point is, like, when is Telcoin on Telcoin network and it is actual money, we are actually bridged, the network is live. And because I don't think that the user experience should be will not be different between alpha and alpha and beta mainnet. It really is just mainnet for most people, but from a technical side, it's been an alpha mainnet sort of concept. Is, I think, something I just for clarity say. But the remaining tasks. Okay, number one, we are working on the boundary shifts. So the epic boundary is implementing boundaries, or implementing epics, which would allow us to rotate validators. And when we rotate validators, that allows us to have new nodes join the network, and new nodes start earning issues. Nodes may they may participate in a particular committee, and so they wouldn't earn rewards for that particular epic. Epics, I think we're projecting about 24-hour periods between the rotation, is our current assessment, although that's a configurable variable, so it may change in the future, but that's beside the point. In order to do that, we need state sync, right? We need nodes to be able to download the entire blockchain, and we need it to be trustless, and we need it to be secure. So that's one thing that we are working to finish. We're also need to, at that epic boundary, transition the committees so that a node that is eligible to be in a committee gets rotated in, or rotated out, right? This whole process, and that is actually described in TNIP 2, and so that is that TNIP 2 is on our TNIPs, and so you can read that whole spec there. That needs to be implemented. Part of the missing features to implement TNIP 2 is the gossip network and the state sync process. And so that is the two things that we are working on in order to get to the TNIP 2. So we got state sync, transitioning committees at the boundary, and then we are with those transitions, we will be making system calls to the consensus registry contract. at that boundary level. And so that actually is something that uh, we don't anticipate to be like a huge lift like in the protocol side. Although, one of our delays from the original October timeline was implementing how do we implement smart contracts into our testing, right? So Marcus joined the team and he's doing all this smart contract work for us, and bridging is critical feature as whole. And so we had to figure out how do we solidity in our Rust library. Out there, Alloy with Paradigm XYZ is like, they've been making leaps and strides and sort of overhauling that the Solidity tools in Rust for that sort of thing. But their code is also bleeding edge, and so that was we had discovered some bugs that were actually in their code that we didn't discover until we were trying to implement that into our own base. And that actually took like a full 2 weeks to implement this system and to debug this. And Marcus is like just joined the team. He's like diving into the Rust code with me, and we're spending like a weekend this what seemed like a simple, straightforward, just put it in the code, and we're running into like fundamental anyway. So we have the for block rewards and for shuffling the validator. The other missing pieces, big picture here, bridging. And that would be to basically wrap up once the state sync is in place and the gossip network is fully in place. They'll bring us. Those are the two biggest missing pieces for running a trustless client for the bridging. And that the Axelar will need to run that client in order to independently verify transactions so that they can vote on them. But again, this is kind of like the multiple birds with one stone, where once we have the LIP P2P network in place, we have the gossip network protocol already built into our implementation of the LIP P2P spec. And that will, and not to mention that that client itself will just sort of be a part of the state sync as well. So this sort of like folds into itself. Integrating with Axelar, we are that's a third-party system. They have their own teams. It was a holidays for them too, so we have a little bit of back and forth with getting that a particular certificate issue whitelisted, but that testing, we plan to test that robustly end-to-end flows. And then we have let's see. Part of that intricacy of bridging from Ethereum to Telcoin network, we will need to just finalize our strategy for funding that Genesis transaction. So it's like we need that bridging transaction on the network, but we don't have money on the network yet to pay for the gas for that transaction. It's kind of a chicken and the egg problem. We're pretty confident that we have a solution in place for that, but again, until Axelar is whitelisted, we can't really we just need to test that a little bit further and write some real end-to-end tests for that. Let's see, the other thing, I think in the security part, in order to code freeze, I've already mentioned we were moving to LIP P2P for enhanced security. And a lot of that security comes from having a larger peer review and more applications using it and exposing more bugs, different use cases. It's used in production a lot more. It is somewhat of an industry standard. The only other security feature that we're missing is that we would like to use a key store for loading and storing encrypted validator keys. There are open source solutions out there that are audited and that seems to be a relatively straightforward process. However, it's don't really know until you start implementing that. But the key stores for loading those validator keys would prevent unencrypted that the nodes need to just sit on file system on a server somewhere. I believe it's 2335, that the team had problem with BLS keys, and this is something that we need as well. We use BLS keys and ED25519 keys, and so we will need to. We want to make sure that those are encrypted on disk for the nodes. So let's see. That's sort of things that are kind of like to-dos. And why not is going to all be the project. I spent some time today as I'm in preparation for this release, so to be able to track them and follow we take them on, and would also encourage here who's in tackling some of these to contribute, and we'll have some good first issues and stuff like that. So other than that, there's a few like little tweaks that I would like to just Paul to releasing, and that and this is something all last sort of like to be discussed as far as like are they truly or they likely are, and so I'm going to share them on they again, like this is not they could be like removed from this last final roadmap here, but we want to considering implement a discrete fee strategy that would more accurately reflect the fluctuations between network loads. We are also looking to switch from BCS encoding to SS encoding. That's the simple serialization that is ideal for serializing, but also Merkle proofs. Because one that we don't have, right, we don't need for mainnet is support for clients. But if we things in there that we know that would like down the road when we have more bandwidth to take on these like killer features, it's a lot easier if we can just get them in now, so we don't have to have like database migrations or the logic in the execution clients that are just like, oh, if it's for block whatever, do it this way, otherwise do it this other way, and then so part of that SSC codec but also we'd like to proofs in our headers and just Trisha tree root, so that we can the future. So and then finally, before the code audit, we will update dependencies as much as we can. That in itself can be just a pain, but it's something that we would love to launch mainnet with as much up-to-date dependencies as possible, because once we go into a code freeze, it is not something that we can just casually swap out and change stuff for convenience or whatever else. So we're trying to take on as much as we think is necessary to set us up for success for the medium to long term before we have to, because anytime we change that code, it really is best practice to get another security audit. So let's see, and that was projected launch date for beta mainnet. As I said, we spent a lot of time. So number two for why not, we spent a lot of time like reviewing this roadmap and kind of projecting timelines. And our strategy was, okay, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? We're gonna and we're going to shoot for ballparks between there, and so again, this is divided by Steve and I taking on most of the Rust code. Marcus has been jumping in on the Rust code that involves the smart contract layer, and it's been a really big help to have him just take on a whole new language, and then Steve and I can just come in and really just review on the PR stage. And that's been really impressive to just, take how he's just taking that on by the horns, because he's got his own smart contract work. He's got his hands full with that. But we are confident that they're not. We are confident that this is our roadmap. That these are the things and the tasks that we need to get done before mainnet. And then that then becomes like, okay, if this goes well, like we think it'll be this many weeks. If we think that this is like, some unknown bug shows up, how is it going to be a quick bug we figure out, or is it going to be one of these like Solidity Sol instance compatibility nightmares that we experienced when we were finally bringing smart contracts into the platform that burned up two full weeks of just like, I mean, these are like 12-hour calls with Marcus that we were just like, I've never seen this before in like this sort of error. And so, these sorts of things are impossible to predict, but we did our best. And so that's why we are putting down a hard date. We want to be code freeze May 5th. And that's a Monday. And so, ideally, we hit it in sometime in April, but May 5th is our current target team that we are really, really excited to get. I think everybody wants to get mainnet out, but I tell you that I know very well how badly mainnet out, and Steve and Marcus, how this is sweat and tears going into this. It's an exciting project. It's something that we are about, and it's not a casual day. Every day is we're getting in here, and it's exciting. It's cutting edge. It is it propels us forward. So it's not something that we just say like, well, May sounds good. It's like, okay, what can we achieve between the three of us, working as much as we need to get on this and to get this shit. So, number 3, are there any high-level milestones or approximate dates for beta mainnet phase and network rollout that the community can track? Even an approximate schedule would help set expectations. So, again, I am just kind of skipping over the beta part and just saying mainnet. I assume that's probably like the intention of your question. And if you do mean beta, then by all means, clarify that in the chat, and then I can do my best to elaborate on that too. But for the high level milestones and approximate dates, yes. So again, I think right now May 5th, the code freeze. So we want to be feature complete. Everything is like, okay, this is what we're going to have the auditors look at. That means that while we're developing these features and we're getting this ready, like we also have to get on scheduled with these auditors, because that takes time to get onto their list. That takes time to get kind of like the back and forth agreements, the all the NDAs, the access, whatever it is, like the payment figured out, the negotiation process, who's doing what. You usually meet with them, and they want to get a background of like, okay, how does this work? You decide, is it going to be a black box test, or are they going to have access to all the source code, which I think is a much more comprehensive test, and will be open source, so it should be just as much information as we can provide the security auditors, to provide them with all the tools that they can think of, like, how can you break this? Please, like, tell us how, like, try to break this protocol, because by that point, by May 5th, like we're going to be feeling really, really good about where we're at. That's the goal, right? When we code freeze, that is going to be that is going to signify that our protocol team is we're stuck on what else could be a problem, because we've given it everything we got on the stuff that we were aware of. So, and it is when you're in your own code and you're looking at it for as long as we've been looking at it, it's sometimes you do miss things, and so that's why it's so important to get this third-party audits going out. But in the meantime, we have done quite a few security audits, and we have identified a few security issues that have brought us concern. And before we go out and we pay a third party to basically tell us something that we've already recognized, we're taking that time to fix these ourselves. And that one example of that is the networking side. Another example that we found internally was a particular way that a node could essentially cheat on their execution results, and kind of like a lazy validator sort of situation where they're able to participate in consensus, they're able to earn rewards, but they're actually not doing any of the CPU requirements that really supports the chain from a data availability layer and from an RPC layer. So, it, it's very complicated, and it is like there's like a million moving parts, but it's something that, again, we want to do a good job. We want mainnet to go off with success. We want it to be secure, and we want it to be something that the MNOs are like the MNOs are not interested in a reputation hit. They already have a good thing going. They're not interested in taking greater risk for a protocol that hasn't done the due diligence and is rock solid. They're just going to flip a coin in the dark, and maybe the Telcoin will take off. That's not what they're interested in, and that's something that we're well aware of. And so everything we can do to make this as battle hardened and tested and secure as we can. That is our biggest goal for the alpha release. Security is paramount. So as far as the high level milestones, approximate dates, again, that's going to be in the roadmap that we release on. I'll be proposing that to Snapshot tomorrow with the council's approval tonight, and then we will have that publicly available for you to check in on any time. That's going to be you can see issues that are going on. You can see pull requests with that we code the solutions for those issues, and as well as like milestones. So with the audits starting. Again, target for that as early as May 5th. We don't have any audit firms lined up, but with this code freeze and like this sort of target, we can start moving forward. Like with a so we still need a TELIP in order to fund the development for this, but once we have the money approved and we move forward with these audits, we can start targeting a week in early May there that would give us time to meet with the auditors for them to identify who is the best auditors on our team that would take this protocol on. We have identified other protocols that would be relevant if they have experience with these other sort of protocols. Like that would be a good thing to find, and just basically kind of start figuring out and coordinating with these other auditor firms. So once that happens, usually with the audit process, they will have an opportunity to evaluate the code, to test the code, and to do the things that they want to do. And try to test it and break it, and that'll be a set timeline, and then they will come back and with their findings, and then we have a time period to implement fixes for those results, and it's a limited amount of time, and then we return that back to them, and they will double check our work to say, okay, yes, this does in fact patch the vulnerability. We'll also have reports for their findings and their solutions, and if they agree with our solution or not. Sometimes when it comes to vulnerabilities and something, we may decide like, well, that's actually, something that we're not concerned about, or it could be something that's like, this solution. Yeah, it's all going to be in the report, right? So again, like security is paramount, so I don't even know why I'm going down that hypothetical, because I expect glowing reviews after we patch whatever potential vulnerabilities they may or may not find. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful update, Grant. Thank you for all of that. I think this open source initiative is going to be really great for community transparency, so they can sort of follow along, and it, enables, less need to, have this deep in the weeds updates, whereas, that's just a live thing that's going on that people can review. So I'm really excited to get that going on the open source proposal, and move things along. So great job. Really appreciate it, man. So was there anything else you wanted to cover there? Are you good to go?
I'm good to go. I appreciate everybody's just always happy to get the feedback on like how we can improve. So I think that this open source initiative will be a great way to kind of move forward with that. And yeah, thanks for caring enough to ask questions, y'all. Telcoin Network is going to be a great thing. 2025 is going to be a great year.
Agreed. Awesome. So now we'll move over to Tim. Welcome, Tim, to discuss the new TIP services agreement between the association and the TAO. It's a critical piece of organizational infrastructure for us. And we had we basically, the forum's doing its job, and now we have a second draft that we're bringing out. So Tim, welcome. It's great to have you. Would love to hear a little overview of what this service agreement is, and when we should expect it to be in its next phase form.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Parker. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yep,
so
you're good.
Yeah, so the service agreement is critical to how the association is going to operate. And just to refresh everyone's recollection, structurally how it works is the association is the brains, Telcoin Autonomous Operations Limited, the TAO, is the arms and legs to get things done on behalf of the association that the association wants to get done. It's the operational entity of the association, but it's a separate legal entity away from the association. It just allows another limited liability function, such that it better protects the association members from any sort of liability that might occur from the operation of the association through the TAO. In order to enable the TAO to be able to operate upon the instructions of the association, we have, of course, the Constitution of the association, councils that have been formed. The association gives its directions to the TAO, but the TAO then has to enter into agreements with service providers. The TAO can enter into agreements with any service provider, one of which initially is Telcoin Holdings PTE Limited, which is the holding company for Telcoin. And that services agreement allows Telcoin to provide necessary services such as Parker, myself, others, and services and intellectual property, licenses to intellectual property over to the TAO so the association can operate. In order to do that, we need to get a services agreement in place, which delineates the services to be provided and the consideration to be provided, and also creates a structure such that those services that haven't been determined yet can be provided in the future. It's a standard way of any company operating. So there's nothing really exceptional about how this is done or operated, but it's necessary so that Telcoin can provide its intellectual property under license so that its ownership in the intellectual property isn't jeopardized, and also allows the association and the TAO to use those services with permission and use them however they need to pursuant to the license terms. So we came up, drafted the services agreement, but there was an issue in the original draft, and there was an issue with regard to inconsistent terminology of the parties. And so I appreciate the community members that had pointed that out. A bit embarrassing to me as a lawyer that occurred, but errors do occur, and I want to give some explanation behind it, not excuses, but certainly, I mean, the fault lies with me, but certainly explanation as to the causes. And the causes, one of the main causes is that we used a service agreement template that Telcoin itself uses globally. And Telcoin wants to do this so that it maintains consistency in service offering terms. and this allows Telcoin to operate much more efficiently. But then the error was created in that there was a term replacement in the Word document, which, because Telcoin is used by the TAO as well as Telcoin Holdings Limited, created a mistake in the basically the licensor and licensee in certain sections of the document. This error was compounded because doing it right before the holidays, and I was just plain, rushing. So what the solution to this is, I went through and I pulled the doc back and went through it in detail, so correcting the error, and then also have had our paralegal go through it for a quality assurance to ensure that it's done correctly, so that we can then use that revised document to get the association approval for the TAO to enter into the document. So that's what we've done now, what we'll be doing going forward, so that we don't have these kinds of errors again. Next steps are to, unless Parker or the council want to do it differently as far as practically implementing and approving the document, is to recirculate that document under a new proposal, so that all association members can see the revised document before they enter into a community vote. I believe that's the way we go about it, but I'm also open to Parker having any input on that procedure as well. So that's basically a summary of the issue and the resolution and my talking point here today.
Well, really appreciate that, Tim. Yeah, and fortunately that we have the forum, right? This is what the forum's for, is to have the community be able to comment and provide feedback and guidance. And so, I as the legal mind behind, at the innovation, the frontier of innovation, when the whole world has kind of said we don't want to use a legal structure for crypto network governance, and then we've built this thing that actually enables that. Turned out, of course, in the courts to be a great idea. I don't think there's any reason to be hard on yourself at all. You've done a wonderful job in building this out, and I certainly appreciate everything you do, and I know everyone else does too. So yeah, well, I think as far as practice goes for this, it's sort of a standard setting thing too. It's like, all right, so you have a proposal, it needs to be revised it's on the forum, it needs to be revised. Do you create a new proposal that's just fresh, or do you use the existing one and edit it? And my personal opinion, if you're thinking about it today, for some time, we've done it the other way, where you just create a new proposal and that starts fresh. I also think that it probably makes sense to just edit the existing proposal with the new document, and then do an endnote that just says, here's the changes that we made to update it. And just gives Ari and whoever else had feedback on it a shout out. Thanks for the feedback, and here's the process for it moving forward. And so we don't have to shift the so we can basically edit the proposal itself on the forum, update it, and just have at the end, hey, here's the updates we made and all that. You think that works?
I think you can do it either way, and so I think you can have the vote and approval on the document as is, contingent upon the party terminology being corrected by council. So that would be me. So, and then to have that document used by the TAO. I think you can do it that way as well, and that would be as binding as issuing a completely fresh new proposal. So either way is fine with me. It works.
Perfect. Sounds good. So that's how we'll move forward, just so that we give out credit to the folks who did a little QA on their own in the community, and so that we have a sort of uniform proposal for us to move forward with. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Tim. Really excited. And so now we've got Squirtel, the man, coming up with an update on this. Since our first meeting, I've been working on our exchange listing strategy, which is, of course, a long-term situation that we're working towards getting listed on all the top exchanges around the world. SquareTel has done a wonderful job in building this out for Telcoin Association. And so, yeah, I just want to welcome you to the floor. As a side note, it's important. This was originally authored by Coops and has also been developed with Leo and Rajesh significantly. So, yeah, SquareTel, you have the floor, my friend.
No, perfect. Thank you. So, first of all, I just want to state I understand that there was certain timelines that it was brought up in the previous meeting. We did come into a couple of additional aspects that we needed to cover to ensure that we weren't essentially just jumping on something. We wanted to ensure we're doing it the right way. By this, I mean we've have to bring in council NDAs because for them to make a decision on the actual exchange processes, everyone needs a non-disclosure agreement. We had to look into aspects for how to mitigate the issues from Telcoin Association being a Swiss variant with the NDA of an exchange. That being so, the difference between the two, one is quite open and about transparency, where with exchanges, you come into all different issues with their NDA and essentially down to each exchange what can and can't be said. So certain aspects you still have to be very cautious because any sort of data, any sort of non-disclosure breach could completely jeopardize certain exchanges. So we've had to look at a variety of different aspects with this, which has, I'll be honest, I have, so myself, Leo, Parker, Grant, many people, Tim was tagged in on some of these and gave his advice. There has been a lot of aspects we've had to look into, from the liability and regulatory compliance risks, how to mitigate aspects, for example, like insider trading. So we'd have to issue potentially a blackout period there. Internal reporting and procedures, how we do that. And essentially there is a hefty document that I've created and the team, the council have gone through to give their advice, different ways we can approach and look at different legal entities of how and what ways would work. So there would be essentially some sorts of legal oversight just so we can see this in due diligence. So what we're still pretty much near finalized. I know there's a couple of bits on there that we have to adapt because we just need a little bit more clarity, which I've made notes on the document for internal. So once this is finalized, we can then take this straight to the forum, gives everyone the insight of how the processes work, the different routes that different council members will have to take, certain aspects they can and can't say, and essentially why. We give the rationale and pretty much the different stages of implementation, the financing and budget, and how the whole process works. On going on to the process, there's one thing I wanted to ask you, Parker, if that's okay. Snapshot vote, for example. I know we spoke about Steve-O's one about the Telcoin emails. This could be a perfect example. We, as the platform council, have essentially down one member because as far as I'm aware, because I don't believe I've seen them in the meetings or anything like that. How do we go about? Because obviously currently it's 6 out of 8 majority vote, which is about 75%. Are we taking that person out and then it's 5 of 7, or is it now 6 of 7? Because that does change the percentage. So, because that will essentially change it from, if it's 5 out of 7 people, that's 71.5%. If it's 6 of 7, that's then 85% approval rating. So I'd be interested to understand how we're going about. Essentially, we are one person down.
So in terms of one person down, can you Who's down?
I believe it's Kath. Correct me if
Oh,
I'm
so
wrong.
did Kath dropped out of the platform
I
council?
I haven't heard or seen them in the meetings. I'm not sure. This is what I assumed because it was the policy, the three strike,
Sure.
but I don't know the
Yeah,
situation,
and
so I wanted to clarify.
it's a sort of rules in form versus rules in use. To the extent we want, I think that if we don't have Kath, if Kath doesn't vote on this and has missed these meetings, then I think that we should bring it to the Compliance Council for enforcement to then have the TAO substitute on our behalf and redo the vote, and then have her electorate re-elect. Now, I will say that I sent emails, or Leo sent an email today to everyone that hasn't voted, and yeah, I mean, I think that's I'm personally not I think it's like do we want to enforce that now, or do we want to give them another chance to vote and join? I think it's
Yeah,
an area that I'm open to either way. I see both sides, but I do think it's important that we that people who are elected are participants, and so that's why we have the liquid delegation as the secondary process for replacing existing council members, and why the TAO basically solves a big problem of decision making costs. And is there to substitute. We would have to run it back and do it over if we don't get a full quorum. But and even though we have 6 out of 8, I think that's a critical part, and that should be a sort of last straw for our fellow council member. And I'm sure there's plenty of eager folks that want to participate that would love to join these and be able to propose and vote. And so yeah, I think that's sort of an outstanding question. My personal opinion is that we sort of say, all right, let's see if Kath votes on this, and then go from there.
yeah,
So yeah, we would have to run it back. And then the NDAs, I think, should be a separate proposal because it's a sort of general purpose NDA. I don't want to really log roll it into the exchange proposal. I think it deserves its own one for clarity, and so that it's not seen as just being tied exclusively from the perspective of confidential information to exchanges, because of course there could be any number of different confidential docs over time that association members should rightfully be able to see with for certain protections that make sure they do not disclose that info. So yeah, it's an outstanding question. I suppose we'll see what the next 48 hours holds and go from there. What do you think?
yeah. No, I'm absolutely fine. It was more. I just wanted, if I want to make sure everyone's essentially pulling their weight,
Yep.
because this is essentially a collaborative approach from everyone.
Yep.
And naturally, there's the Telcoin flow of how I know it's only a very small amount over the period of time, for like a year for the float that each council member earns. But if someone's not participating, not actively doing anything, they've still, because they've got the NFT, they can still technically claim, which would then cause additional issues.
Sure. Yeah, getting sort of it's shirking duties that everyone else is part of, and as you said, it's a collective governance system of a community, and we have rules, and I think we need to ensure that they're being enforced while not also sort of I'm kind of like, I suppose, like, voting is clearly the most important thing that a council member can do, but I think there's absolutely recourse for not having come to 3 consecutive meetings. That if you feel intense, it's a sort of intensity of preferences. Basically you go to the compliance council with the CCIP and say, we've had a council member that hasn't showed up to this and they haven't voted. So we'd like to revoke their NFT and have the TAO substitute in the meantime while we get another election going for that particular candidate, which we call liquid delegations. So let's touch base on that after we get finality on this vote. And if that's if there's no vote there, then I will join you along that proposal to have a replacement substitute and liquid delegation.
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely fine.
sounds good to me.
And yeah, so just to continue, there are as well, actually, Parker. So with the Swiss variant aspect of the Telcoin Association, this is about transparency, but there are NDAs out there like that with aspects that we cannot talk about. So how would I go about this? Because everything would be per exchange for how they view it.
Sure. So I think it's one in basically Tim already created the NDAs, and Leo you've seen them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And it's basically just the KYM process with it, the know your member process that we followed before as council members, but generalized to any association member that wants to go through that and sign the NDA. And Tim, if you want to chime in on the recourse that the association has to protect itself given a breach of contract on that, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So the association is a legal entity itself and is able to not only does it act through a subsidiary of the TAL, but it can actually act in its own recourse as well. And so when it enters into the NDAs with these various exchanges, it can enforce the terms of the NDA if there's some sort of breach. Through two remedies. One is injunctive relief, and the other is legal relief, which is normally cash compensation. And there is jurisdiction that is stated within the NDA. And so any entity that enters into the NDA is subject to that jurisdiction and those enforcement mechanism. Was that the question that was being asked?
Yeah, broadly, but go ahead, Squirtle.
Sorry, it was more from naturally I am speaking with exchanges. There are many things due to the NDAs that have been signed there that technically we still would not be able to talk about. I know the community will want to know as much as info as possible, but then we also have the risk of essentially running insider trading aspects if people know that there are a certain exchange, or not naming them, but if there is something, how do we mitigate that aspect? Because then that comes into a totally different issue.
Yeah, so I'll just hand it over to you, Tim. Basically, that NDA that we created for the council members or for the association members to sign with the association, for them to be able to see what we've created. TEL it's a live document of all the exchanges that we've spoken to over time, the status, progress, timelines, and as you know, if someone, we want to balance transparency. We want the association members, given that this agreement is between this entity and their entity, to have the ability to transparently review this exchange system without breaching the confidentiality that the exchanges impose on us. And so we're just saying, here's this confidential information, sign this NDA. If you're in the association, you can review it with restrictions and recourse.
Yeah, there's no breach. So just so I'm sure that we're all on the same page, there's no breach of confidentiality. There's a confidentiality agreement between the association and the exchange, and then there's confidentiality agreements between the association and each of its members. And so then the flow of information is from exchange to association to the individual members. There's no breach of confidentiality in doing that, because the NDA allows the association to give it to its officers or directors or members on a need to know basis, in order to effectuate the purpose of the NDA. So the NDA's purpose is to have the free flow of information in order to establish a relationship between the association or the TAO and the exchange. So to the extent that the association needs to have its members have that information, and those members have signed their own NDA binding them to not disclose or use that information for any purpose other than for the purpose of the association entering into an exchange agreement, then that's fine. And so individual members who would get that information then go off on their own and start trading on it on an inside basis would be subjecting themselves to the liability for breach of the non-disclosure agreement which they've entered into.
So on the aspect of our council meetings, though, how naturally there's only certain things I can talk about, which I'll be quite limited to in a way. Because
So
I'm
you're saying
actively
right now at
speaking.
this
Yeah,
moment,
I'm active. I'm actively speaking with exchanges, and the purpose of the council meetings are to talk about the process. But I don't want to jeopardize anything, if that makes sense. Because from an exchange point of view, their NDA would oversee pretty much everything. They want to ensure nothing goes out. Exchanges are very strict on this.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that kind of
I guess
puts me in a tricky position.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It puts me in a tricky position for what I can and can't talk about then, which I think we would need to have an understanding of the clarity from that. So would that be per exchange, or would there be specific things that we can talk about and we just have quite a few aspects redacted, especially if it goes to forum, for example?
Right. So the concept of what we need to implement on the council member or the wider association member level is the concept of need to know. So the exchange is giving us information. We're giving the exchange information, but let's just focus on the information the exchange is giving us. They're giving us that information because they want the association to enter into an agreement with them for consideration going back and forth. So they're giving us their confidential information so we can assess that. Now, they're giving that information to you as a representative of the association itself. So it's all governed by the non-disclosure agreement, protected by that. You then have this information. You're a member of the council. So the question becomes, of that information, what do you disclose to the council? Because you're exposing that information to a wider user base. And so we don't want to necessarily expose it to users who don't have a need to know. So of the information you're getting, you would report on the council meetings to the extent that information is needed to know for the council to carry out its mandated duties under the Constitution. And each of the council members have their own non-disclosure agreement with the association. So it's safe to give that information to them if they have the need to know it. So you as a representative of the association, and you because you're leading this project, are in that position. Now you certainly can disclose it to Parker too. If you have questions, you can disclose it to me as counsel so that we can make those determinations. So if you ever have a question individually, come to me and or Parker, and we'll work through it. But that's the sort of guiding principle there. Now, as far as a wider use dissemination among just association members in general, well, then it's a higher threshold of why are we disclosing that information? Is there a need to know for the general membership? Because the general membership is represented on the various councils by certain council members. It's like a representative democracy. Me as an individual voter, I don't get or need to know everything that my representative in Congress does because I've delegated sort of by my vote the authority for them to make those decisions and determinations. But if there's something within the information that you're getting such that the council would need the forum members to know, and it's in line with the overall transparency purpose of the association, then we can make that on a case by case basis. But I guess what I'm trying to convey to you is, one, we're protected in doing that to the extent the association members have signed an NDA with the association. Two is, even though there is that protection, we don't disseminate unless there is a need to know for these other individuals, the council members, the general forum members, to know that particular information. And then if you get into situations where you're unsure or unclear or want some support in your determination, then Parker and I are here to help you.
Yeah, no, perfect. So essentially in these meetings, all I can really say is things are progressing. Even though there is silence, doesn't mean there's a lack of progression. It's just we aren't able to speak about certain things.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely completely appropriate. And certainly you would say, as issues come up, which pursuant to the council's constitutionally mandated job, that you will disclose that information so that the council can do its job. But until there is more certainty or clarity such that the disclosure to the wider council is necessary in order to achieve the function, then you're not going to disclose everything. And I think, council members can obviously speak up if they have some particular issue, and we can address it in these forums, these meetings, and work through any issues. But I think it's a completely appropriate way to go about doing it.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Yeah, I've no issue with the council. With the council members actually knowing there, because that's due to the whole NDA aspect that everyone would have had covered. It was just more for the broader meetings that we have that are open and public. That's perfect.
Yeah, and I think you know what is acceptable to share publicly and what's not.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not going to be acceptable to share publicly on here. And that's why we set up the NDA and have the live doc and enforce any breaches of contract on that. And so I think it's you're the leader on this, and I think we're gonna sort of defer to you and just serve as resources to guide what you feel is appropriate to share, so that we can ultimately achieve the outcome that we want from the proposal. And so with that in mind, I think the next step is to just get that proposal live when you feel like it's at that point, and the NDA proposal going as well, so we can vote on them. And if it needs to be a TELIP to finance a specific budget for the estimate of what you expect exchange costs to be over the next XYZ months, or with even within the next year, it's something we could certainly put into the upcoming proposals with the TELIP for year 2 TEL issuance from the Treasury, or it can be or you can just turn this exchange proposal into a TELIP from a TIP, and that will, of course, have both the platform and Treasury councils required to approve it, and would enable you to get that funding in a faster time period if needed. We can really go either way with that, but I think information security on this is key to the relationships that we're trying to foster. And so I think for now, if it's just things are going well, we'll get and update the master sheet and get that NDA in place. That'll be the primary mechanism for sharing info, and then when there are public things that you feel comfortable disclosing, which I think for the purposes of this meeting, it should be things that you feel comfortable sharing publicly. Then once again, Tim and I can always be a resource for you, but I think you know what is appropriate and what's not.
Yeah. Okay. So from that, if we can get the NDA for the council members processed, just so we've got everything signed, just so then if there are any aspects that I can speak about, I can, and then, or when that time comes, I can then bring it up. But yeah, no, that's perfect.
Awesome. Thanks, Cortel. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Coops, what's up, my man?
No, just a quick question. Do I need to, if I want to be on the general NDA, do I need to email someone, or is that something that will go out for all the council members to be on?
That'll
or
be
does
your
that happen
council.
after? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do a standalone TIP proposal for this NDA. It's basically just the know your council member process that you did after you were elected, and generalize it to all the association members so they can fill that out, get the NDA in place, and open up the records for people that want to know, need to know, and with protections, of course.
Gotcha.
Awesome. So yeah, let's discuss some upcoming proposals at a very high level. I know it's been a longer than usual meeting, and I've had some great info. And then we'll go through to open up Q&As and just finalize the next meetings so that we're all in sync with when works for everyone. So yeah, upcoming proposals, several significant ones. TELIPs and TEIPs are the jurisdiction of the platform and Treasury councils. The TEIPs, just as a refresher, these are social policies that do not require any sort of financing. In a perfect example of this is the email proposal that's out that costs nothing. We're a nonprofit association, so we have that with Google and can give all the council members email addresses, and then TELIPs, which are basically getting both the platform and Treasury Council involved, which includes 6 out of 8 and then 4 out of 4 from the Treasury Council. So unanimous consent, so that from the least amount of necessary people with unanimous consent, so that all 4 minor groups have approved and consented to this usage of our primary source of TEL. So we have the year 2 TEL issuance proposal, which Grant and I are finalizing right now, and we'll be presenting, after posting it live in advance of the next platform and Treasury Council meeting. So probably we'll propose it Wednesday or Thursday, 2 weeks from now. That also includes Telcoin network security audit proposal from Grant and Utku. TELxIPs. There's 2 TELxIPs that Andrew and Taikini have over time crafted with tremendous community input in these meetings that it sounds like are just about ready to go, sans the actual financing necessary for them. So I think we're gonna get those, estimate the costs associated with those proposals, and then add that once they're approved by the TELx Council, then we will include that into the year 2 TEL issuance proposal as well, so that we can finance the TELx Council's mandate to plan and finance infrastructure, while still ensuring that they have the same level of issuance that they're earning, and can use to incentivize markets. And then the last one, of course, is a TIP related to, actually there's 2 more, the NDAs. And then the final one is I met with Monica Fior at Monica Fior today. Tim, I met with them this morning. This admin / bookkeeper, fiduciary out of Lugano, to serve as our bookkeeper / admin, so that the association is in line with tax and other obligations, making sure that it is in good standing. And so, yeah, I met with them today. They have Lugano is a small town, and so they also graciously offered to get us set up with a bank account for the association. They also offered to get us set up with a TAO if this is needed, or we don't have someone else, a TAO admin for London. And so, yeah, I was very impressed with them. That'll be another proposal for us to add in that is critical to our ongoing operations. So I'm very excited about that, and I was impressed with them. And we'll bring that proposal when we have it ready to go to the floor for everyone to consider and approve. And speaking of the floor, let's open it to the community for any questions. Let's see, is there anything in there? Okay, yeah. So, if anyone has any questions, love to answer them. I guess we could start with Tim. This is a question for you, actually. Are we, the Telcoin Association, MiCA compliant? That's one that Captain Beben just put in the chat, and I think you would be uniquely suited to answering that question, which is a really good question.
Yeah, so MiCA is, to inform everybody what MiCA is. MiCA is a statute that was enacted in the European Union. It creates various structures for issuance of stable coins, as well as crypto asset services. It creates a function of what's called a crypto asset service provider, a CASP, which is a regulatory license to operate as a CASP within the EU. Either you're an entity operating within the EU, you're located within the EU, or you're providing those CASP services to people in the EU itself. Telcoin is currently applying for its CASP, and will have a CASP prior to the MiCA going into full effect, which I believe is late 2025, maybe early 2026. So it will be through that services agreement with Telcoin, in which the association would provide those types of services. But there's because one is the association is not located within the EU, and its operational arm is also not within the EU. It's within the UK. But to provide those services to EU residents, the association, its operational arm, is entering into a service agreement whereby Telcoin would be offering its regulated services through its entity. So that is the structure in which the Telcoin Association and its subsidiary would be MiCA compliant when MiCA goes into effect.
Wonderful. So let's see. Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to either come up and ask or share in the chat? Dave, the answer to your question is the private channel is basically this Google Doc that is a live working document that is continuously updated as we get new information from exchanges. And I don't know that there's been any sort of private channel proposal for that. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. Don't have a strong opinion. I think it's probably good to have that sensitive information be from the perspective of the amount of work that it takes to do updates in the live working doc, and then to update the private channel. I think it's probably good to stick with that. but then perhaps it is useful to create another private channel within this Discord that is consisted of exclusively people that have signed the NDA. So I would leave that up to maybe a further discussion within Discord, or if Squirtel, you have any thoughts and think there should be a private channel within Discord for NDA signers, totally up to you.
Yeah. In fairness, I believe that it would probably be great if we did have a private channel for the council in here, so then we can have quick meetings or anything like that, or if there are certain updates, we can actually schedule so we can all hop in, because there will be points where there will be aspects that a variety of different sectors of the council will want to talk about and then open up. So yeah, I'm all for that. That would definitely make a lot of sense from my side.
Okay, let's add that to the NDA then, and we'll just figure out that. I think that structure just looks like the private minor council channels and the public ones. So you have the public ones that already exist where people can see it, and then we would just create one that is invite only or whatever, and we can just add that to the NDA TIP. And yeah, it sounds like a good structure to me. If you agree with that. Hello?
Sorry, yeah, from my perspective, yeah, that works for me. As long as it fits with, for example, Tim doesn't see any issues with that, or there are no other aspects, then yeah, I believe it would be a great way for the council not only to chat with each other, because obviously we do have the separated council calls and meetings, so it would be a great way for all of us to then interact and go through a lot of updates.
Yeah, maybe we just start with one channel, I guess, for everyone that's NDA'd, and then
No, I agree. That's exactly.
Yeah, I realized after saying that it was really silly and created unnecessary complexity. So yeah, okay, let's just add that to the NDA TIP, and we'll be in a good spot to have a functional, transparent, but confidential forum for discussions. Awesome, everyone. Well, this has been great. If anyone has any objections to the following dates, please speak up now, and we can confirm them. I'll just do January 23rd and February 6th at the same time as now. Does that work for everyone on PC and TC?
Yes, works for me.
All good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Perfect. So calendar invites will be sent to everyone. And remember, these meetings are crucial for transparency, communication with our community. And yeah, I'm just really excited, thrilled to kick off this year. It's been a great meeting, a ton of insights. And just as a last, are there any final updates, questions before we conclude? Or shall we adjourn?
Oh, sorry, Parker. I did have a quick one.
Cool.
What's the process for, in terms of the council member who hasn't shown up? What's the process for getting a new council member? I can't remember what.
Yeah, well, so I would first and foremost say that based on the rules, that the process could be executed now for saying, hey, this person hasn't shown up and it's not within, we have to monitor, we have to enforce them. So basically you just do a CCIP proposal, submit it to the forum, and then and then you can submit it to the compliance council snapshot, and then you'll need a 3 out of 4 vote to have that be enforced, which I think is proper procedure. And then we'll revoke that token, that NFT. The compliance or the TAO will then vote on behalf of the minor group with that NFT on any proposals that were missed, which I think is probably the most important time to be enforcing at people not showing up is when they don't vote. Some folks are in the other side of the world, and so it's hard to get to a 3 p.m. Central meeting, and something to consider as well. But there is a certain threshold where we need to know. You need to reach out to us in the chat and tell us you're not going to be able to make it. That's how the process is set up. So yeah, basically forum proposal, then do a CCIP on the snapshot, and then once that's done, we would substitute, execute any votes, and do a special election or a liquid delegation for anyone that hasn't shown.
Well, I was just going to say, is it a new election, or does it get passed down to the next person really who was proposed on the last election? But yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's just one member vote on whatever minor group has elected that person. But then we would propose give the community some time to put in their names in the hat, and then take the all of the members that are the potential members that have nominated themselves. Give them specific. I think it's 2 weeks. I have to double check the rules to nominate themselves, because we do want to have a fresh set of potential council members. And okay, this is great. So yeah, we'll see what the outcome of this TIP is, because we have pretty much everyone's voted so far, and so that would kind of be at that point I would move to enforce it. Great. Well, let's see. Oh, there's another question that's just any info on compliance within the UK, and if Great British Pound will be the first stablecoins available when V4 releases. Yeah, so a little bit out of scope for this discussion. I would point you towards the Telcoin Discord, Telcoin Holdings Discord, to ask any questions related to that product offering. It's not an area that is really within scope for the association, though I do appreciate the question, and we have an exciting product over here, and really looking forward to a big 2025, both for the association and for all of its members. So thank you everyone for participating in our 5th recurring council meeting. I will see you on January 23rd.